Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Couple Fix. This is Jennifer Chappell-Marsh.
And I'm Janine Estes.
And we are so happy to have you join us today. If you've been listening to our podcast, you know that we've been talking about relationship issues. And more specifically, we've been talking about how external things can impact the relationship. In our couples therapy office, we have couples that come in sometimes because there's issues that are happening in the relationship, and also a lot of times couples come in because they're trying to navigate external forces that are influencing the relationship and causing a disconnection. So today we're going to talk about something that's very common, and that's annoying in-laws.
You can choose your spouse, but you definitely cannot choose your in-laws. You're dating or even married to your partner, and they're a package. And when you're dating them, married to them, sometimes comes with in-laws from hell. Having monster in-laws can ultimately destroy a relationship. So this is something, as Jennifer mentioned, we see in our office, and there's these main topics, and the in-laws come in, and it's so distressing for couples. And what do you do if you've got a partner whose parents are in-laws from hell? That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and we can't change family, like you're saying, Janine. We can't change them, and we can't choose who they are. But what we can do is, and what we do in our office every day, is we help couples be prepared to have emotional armor if they need it, how to come up with game plans as a couple, and how to learn how to have your partner step up and block the blows if need be.
And sometimes there's a lot of blows.
Yeah, so we want you to, after this podcast, come out of this with a really good understanding about how to insulate your relationship from something as stressful as troubling in-laws, because it's valid. So first, what we're going to do is we're first going to talk about what not to do. If you have annoying in-laws, if they're overbearing, if they're critical, here's what to avoid. Here's the sorts of things that are going to make it worse.
So I want you guys all to imagine having a balloon, and you're blowing air into a balloon, and each puff, the balloon gets larger. And after a while, if you blow in so much air, once you hit that point, it pops. A balloon will pop after a while. It can only hold so much air in. Same things happen emotionally for us, is that we have this emotional balloon inside, and time again of dealing with something really frustrating, we can suppress it, bottle it up, try to let it roll off our back, but after a while it builds and builds and builds, and then we pop. We either get stress, headaches, ulcers, we start reacting poorly with our partner. So that's the first tip on what not to do, is don't keep it in. This will cause like the pressure cooker response, and sooner or later you're going to explode. Holding emotions in will only create resentment as well. So don't keep it in.
Yeah, because that's poison to the relationship. Also, don't shut down. I think that a lot of times when something is stressful and creating anxiety, something doesn't feel good, we want to avoid it, right? And that makes sense. It's like you touch a hot stove, you're not going to do that again. If it hurts or creates pain, you want to avoid it. So a lot of times couples, if they're having annoying in-laws, they'll stop engaging. They'll stop trying to build that relationship altogether. They won't make eye contact. They'll avoid events, and they'll threaten to cut off the relationship altogether. And so while that's a normal kind of response, that also can create resentment through your partner and conflict in your relationship.
Gosh, holding it in, the resentment builds so much, especially things not talked about. So I was thinking about an example when I was growing up, I have this brother who's older than me, and he could definitely be a jerk and kind of bully in times. And he would just bully me at times, and I would get so angry, and I could talk to my friends about him and say, gosh, he's just pissing me off, and I'm angry about him. But as soon as they started to talk poorly about my brother, I would kind of get protective. Like, don't talk about my brother, right? Don't talk about him. That's my brother. And I get kind of like puff my chest out and like protect. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like that with the in-laws, is that if we're upset about our partner's parents, it's kind of like they're going to get a bit protective because it's their parents. Even though they might get irritated with them, they may be really injured, there might have been some really bad things that had happened, it's still their parents. So you want to be really careful, and so don't come off criticizing to your husband or wife saying, your parents are terrible. Just really be sensitive around that, because their instinct will be to protect, kind of like with my brother. I knew he was a jerk, but to have that come up to me, I would get incredibly protective. And that's something that we see all of the time with partners. They will get protective around their parents because it's their parents, and they get kind of they get tied up. Two people they love the most is the partner and their parents, or three people. So really walk lightly around this. Avoid any type of criticism, blaming language.
Absolutely, because all that does is it puts your spouse in the middle. It makes it feel like it's a you versus them thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that creates distance, which is...
It's hard to be in the middle.
Absolutely. The other thing is to try to avoid reactive mode. A lot of times, especially with these types of relationships, we want them to be good. And we don't want them, to go sour. We don't want to have these negative interactions, so that we can kind of kid ourselves and go into a situation where we're caught off guard. And that can create sort of a knee-jerk reaction. And then all of a sudden we have a tone, or we use our volume goes up in our conversations, or we snap, and that can create a volatile situation. So try to avoid reaction mode. The more you can predict what's going to happen and prepare yourself, the better. Okay, so we just went through what not to do. If you're having trouble with your in-laws, especially if this is creating disconnection in your relationship, these are the things to avoid. These are things that, if you do them, are going to create more problems. If you keep it in, right, that balloon is going to burst eventually. If you shut down completely, if you criticize your spouse about your partner or your in-laws, and if you are in reaction mode, all of these things are going to create more problems, more distance in your relationship, and ultimately it's going to become an us versus you thing instead of you and your partner are a team against any external force. And that's what we want. We want you to feel like you and your partner are together and can take on anything. So along those lines, now we're going to talk about the fix.
My favorite part of the episode. So basically let's talk about the fix of how to handle this situation. It's a very difficult situation. Here's a person that you are in love with. You've committed your life with them. And they come with bags. They come with these parents that you don't like. So what we're going to do is scratch that.
Pause. Check.
I totally got distracted.
Pause. I distracted you. I had a moment of like,
Uh-huh.
All right, we need to edit this. We're going to go back to the intro to the fix.
Me. Yeah. So here we go. So the fix is my favorite part of the episode of how to handle your annoying in-laws. Here's somebody you love, and they come with parents. Whether you like it or not, they do come with parents. And we want to give you like the step-by-step, how do we deal with this? So first things first is you've got to really dig deep and understand why you're so upset or why you're so annoyed with them. Since you may have some of the buildup, you might want to write it down. Just start to understand your feelings. Write it down. What exactly are you annoyed about? Do you hate it that they come over whenever they want? Do you hate it that they tell him what to do? What is it that you hate? Write it down. What do they do that make you feel bad? Do you feel put down? Do you feel like they're talking down to you? Do you feel like there's this awkward silence, but it feels judgmental? Just write that down and begin to understand what exactly you're upset about so you can move into step number 2.
And step number 2 is to be honest with your partner and while being mindful of the delicateness of the situation. So we want to support you in being able to communicate your experience, but we want you to do so in a way that's not attacking or blaming. Because again, that goes into criticizing your in-laws, which is going to just put your partner into protection mode. So once you have, it pinpointed what is actually bothering you, sit your partner down and talk about your experience. So, for example, if one of your issues with your in-laws is that they stop over unannounced, and instead of going to your partner angry and saying, they're so annoying, they just think they can come over whenever they want, and this is not okay, and that's going to put your partner on defense. But if you are able to talk to your partner about, hey, when this happens, it creates a lot of anxiety for me, right? And walk your partner through the stress and the anxiety that you go through with that unpredictability. Because if your partner is able to understand what your experience is in a way that's not blaming, they're more likely to hear you.
So more like the unpredictability is overwhelming for me. Here's why it overwhelms me. I had a lot of unpredictabilities in my life that were bad, and so I'm totally anxious when somebody just pops by unannounced. Do you think we can figure out what to do here, right? We just want to get to that root that she's talking, basically, Jennifer, what you're talking about. So I think then this leads us to step number 3, is to ask for reassurance and support. So if your skin is crawling and your stomach is in knots by just the thought of your in-laws, which this happens over and over and over for couples, and it's awful to go through, it's definitely time to get support from your partner. Don't try to let this one roll off your back or try to handle it solo and pretend like everything's okay. Your partner's going to see right through you. They won't know what it's about, but they'll see right through you. So it's time to get support from them. Your partner can't read your mind. They won't know how to support you unless you ask in a vulnerable way. So be explicit on, I need help. When your parents stop by, I need to come up with a plan on how we can let them know not to stop by unannounced because it creates so much anxiety for me. So being really explicit, I need help with talking to them. Could you help me with this? Especially because it's your partner's parents. They've got to kind of step up to the plate because it's part of their package. So we need to talk to them explicitly about their needs.